Only Ramonas and liberals slag off the UK, Cristo. I mean, is there not? I mean, is it an issue when it comes to the left? I hate terms like the left and the right. I have to be honest, I don't love them, but for the purposes of this conversation, and bearing in mind you are now the representative of the left.
The entire left.
One of the few ones that makes it onto this station.
Don't tell Ofcom.
No, actually, in fairness, we have lots and lots of different voices. I'm being naughty. But
Julia Hartley-Brewer, she's a famous social democrat.
Well, yeah, but she has a lot of people on that challenge her.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know.
Yeah, she does. But no, is it an issue when it comes to the left that, especially here in the UK, that there is this lack of patriotism? There is there doesn't seem to be an ability to differentiate between seeing the issues that the UK has, of which there are many, and loving the UK, which seem to be two very different things to those people.
You know what? I find this a bit weird because it's not what I see. Like, I mean, firstly, I really love this country, and you know, I had the privilege of growing up here, but I don't think my grandparents didn't, and they really love this country. And what I love about it will be different to what somebody else loves. You know, I think about like the landscape of the South Downs and the Cairngorms, where I love to go hiking. I think of the amazing music of Elgar and Benjamin Britten, because that's the kind of thing I'm into. Or you know, I was listening to Elizabethan choral music yesterday, because that's the kind of weirdo I am. That kind of amazing history we've got. Did you say gay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big gay. I like the gay stuff. You know, well, yeah, you know.
That's like a game show. You've outgayed the game.
I have. Paul O'Grady and Lily Savage are amazing comedy history. You know, those are the things I love, and for somebody else it'll be different. But the point is, we all take the different things from our country that we love, and it's not about saying, oh, it's better than other places. It's about saying, this is where I feel at home, and that's where I belong, and that's what I care about. And you say, oh, people aren't patriotic. And I just think, I feel like patriotism is just about belonging here and loving it, and I feel that's always been there. But in my lifetime, the visibility of flags, the visibility of remembrance, these kind of big patriotic things has massively increased. Increased. Oh my God!
But then also,
there are so many more flags than when we were young.
The complaints about them have as well. You know, what about that story from a couple of weeks ago, where the guy who's got the fish and chip shop had the Union flag outside, and there were complaints to bring it down. Let me just finish this, because you know, I agree. We do seem to have a lot of nice things that we're all allowed to be patriotic about, but also there is this underlying sense that we're not allowed those nice things. Like, you know, there's an example. Yeah, and I'm not saying from you, but there seems to be this desire to absolutely everything. So take Paul O'Grady, Lily Savage. Oh my God, what a genius. Absolutely brilliant. The art of drag. Oh no, the art of drag. Sorry, it actually undermines women. And the contingent that say, well, actually drag is insulting to people. It's a parody. And sometimes that comes from the right as well as the left. I'm not just saying it's
I think that mostly
left.
Comes from the right, to be fair.
But it's this sort of idea that we can't have nice things, because anything nice, I guarantee you that Elizabethan choral music, there'll be someone that will say that that's colonialist and racist and that we're not allowed it. You know, every single nice thing we seem to have, there is a contingent of people who want to bring it down as something that is sinister, racist, inappropriate, a colonialist, a stain on British identity, and it's something that we are not as a nation allowed to enjoy. Now, I don't know whether that's a uniquely British trait, that maybe we are so insular sometimes that we're constantly sort of analysing ourselves and we can't just allow ourselves to like stuff, or whether it's something that's got worse in recent years. But would you say that that's a fair comment? There's a lot of that seems to go on.
I think I understand why you feel that way and why you might see it that way, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think that people have always complained about stuff and not liked different things. It's just that discussion is so public now because of social media, and therefore like it's something that ends up in the papers as opposed to being something that people talked about in a pub somewhere. Like,
so the amplification.
It's the amplification of it, and I think that it's fine for people to complain about stuff as long as it doesn't, I don't care if somebody complains about the Elizabethan music, I just care if it stops it from being played. And, I'd also say that some of this is a little bit like you're saying it's kind of anti-patriotism or something, and I think that's not true, because let's think about this Okay, so there's this Union Jack advert for a fish and chop.
Flag.
Union flag,
The Jack is when it's on a boat.
Yeah, but also that's just what people call it, and I think that's okay.
No, but that's not.
My dad was in the Navy, and he always says this to me, and I'm a bit like, come on, but people call it the Union Jack. I think that if that's what people call it, then it's what people call it. Anyway,
wrong.
I'll say Union flag. I'll say
unpatriotic.
Well, this is it. Okay, this is it. People say, "Oh, that's unpatriotic," when actually they're just something else totally different is going on. This is a very good example. There was a Union flag painted on fish and chip shop wall. It was an advert for that shop. It is illegal to have an advert on a big public wall that hasn't been authorised by the local council. Now, you can say that law is right or wrong, but it is the law at the moment, and the local authority has the legal duty. They would be breaking the law if they did not enforce that. Now, their problem with it was not the fact that there was a Union flag there. Their problem with it was that it was an illegal, unauthorised advert. They said to this guy, you've got to get authorisation for it. He didn't. They told him to take it down. Now, all of that, people can hear that and say, oh, the local authority should go do something else like build public toilets rather than, concentrate on that kind of nonsense. You can believe that if you want.
We're showing a picture of the.
But there you go. It's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing. But the point is that the council has the duty to tell him to take it down. And what does actually kind of annoy me about this is that this is then turned by shock jocks like yourself into something about patriotism, because their problem with it was not the Union flag. Their problem with it was that it's an illegal advert. Let me finish. And I think it's really important when our country is increasingly divided that we don't feed this idea of, oh, you're not allowed to fly the flag anymore. The problem wasn't the flag. The problem was that it wasn't authorised.
There are countless examples of where things have been changed because of you talk about your call on music and you say, right, well, I would only have a problem if it was taken away, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a fair comment. But then there are examples of things like the proms, where, the proms where you have, Rule Britannia, which is sung at the end. And, people being very passionate about wanting that sung because it's a tradition and because it's part of Britain. And people saying, no, you shouldn't be allowed to have that anymore because of the fact that it has those lyrics in it that people will then find offensive. The example I always return to, which I find hilarious.
But it hasn't been cancelled, is the point. The BBC
there are calls for it to be cancelled.
Okay, there are calls for it. I'm fine with there being calls for it. I just don't want the BBC to give in to them, and they are not going to give in to them, and they haven't given in to them.
But you don't know that they won't give in to them.
Of course. My God. If they did that, then the BBC would be abolished the next day.
What about Black Boy Lane? Black Boy Lane.
So I actually think that when you've got things like that, where, I walked down a road called that a few days ago, when you've got these historical examples of, I think it's fair to say, like, people from minority ethnic communities perhaps like not being totally taken seriously or being patronised a little bit, I think the better thing, the ideal thing, is to have context, right? Is to have, like, next to the sign that says the name of the road, you also have a little plaque that says, like, okay, here's the history of how this name came about, this is what we think it represents. That kind of context is a way of maintaining the history, but also representing the fact that, like, maybe it's not particularly nice in all sorts of ways. But the point is this, right? You start off with, like, the Rhodes sculpture in the University of Oxford, this sculpture of an extremely racist, terrible man who donated money that allowed this particular Oxford college to exist, is a really good example.
Or the Bristol guy.
So the man who made loads of money from... And another example. Both of those examples, just to remind people, this was a statue in Bristol of a man who had made a lot of money from slavery, and it was then eventually pulled down by
during
protesters.
the Black Lives Matter protest, but also was very famous for his philanthropy in Bristol as well. So he had the sort of mixed but controversial legacy, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Why are you so
well, I'm a bit like, okay, mixed legacy, like when an evil person does a good thing, do they have a mixed legacy? That's one way of describing it.
An evil person does a good thing in the context of the time. Yes, if a person kept a slave nowadays but donated to children in need, I wouldn't be saying, well, look, that's a great person. So in the context of the time...
So there were lots of people at the time who were really critical of slavery. So
it's a good job that the United Kingdom abolished it then, isn't it?
Yes,
exactly.
Helped
do that.
I agree
very
strongly.
Very rarely pointed out fact in the context of this conversation.
Not sure about that, but anyway. What happened with both of those campaigns... Constant. So what happened with both of those campaigns about both of those statues is that you had, for literally decades, local people saying, we want this statue to have context around it. We want there to be a plaque that says, like, this guy did really evil things, and he was a really important part of this city or this college's history. So we've got a statue there, but like we're really ashamed of the evil stuff that he did, right?
Yeah, he's got a mixed legacy now, and this at one point he was revered. Now, in recent years, his legacy has been reviewed as more controversial, and this is so we leave the statue here to judge for yourself. Here's a QR code for more information.
And here's facts. Here's facts and history about him.
I think
right?
I would be in favour of that.
Right, and that is what those campaigners asked for years and years and years, and they also asked for things like, okay, reflecting the terrible things of this guy, let's also have, a bit more money put into helping kids from disadvantaged backgrounds like thrive in this city or come to this Oxford college. And that stuff didn't happen. Those campaigners were ignored. And what happens when you ignore those very reasonable, legitimate demands is people get radicalised, and then they end up doing things like pulling the statue down.
Sometimes you don't get what you want. That doesn't mean that you can pull a statue down.
My argument...
I'd have a statue of Sue Ellen Ewing in front of, the Remembrance Memorial, but I'm afraid that I won't go and pull it down because I'm not going to get that.
My argument is that if you ignore reasonable demands, it's not that, say, it makes it right to pull statues down, though I've got to admit I don't particularly care about statues like that. The point is not that it makes it right, the point is that it will happen.
But then I think that's... I agree, by the way, that a plaque was the best way forward, or, again... I heard a commentator a few months ago who said that actually you should have kept the paint that was thrown on there and put a plaque next to it saying, look, this is why the paint ended up. This is part of the history.
Yeah.
But I think when those things are torn down, people feel that there is a sense that a little piece of the patriotism of the UK is removed.
Okay, no. This is not okay. This is not okay. People are not patriotic about former slave traders. That's not. People are patriotic about good things in this country. This is a lovely country. It is a beautiful country. It's a country of reasonable and fair-minded people.
And bad stuff is a part of our history. Bad stuff is a part of our history.
But that's not why people are patriotic. They're not patriotic about the bad stuff. They're patriotic about getting rid of slavery. They're patriotic about the good and beautiful stuff. Now, people might not want statues to come down because they think it's important for us to acknowledge our history, but I really, really push back against the idea that people are patriotic about slave traders.
No, I think that they are patriotic about parts of our history seemingly being removed because by a baying mob rather than by any kind of sort of democratic means. So I think that feeds into it. I think people they like our statues, whether they like what they stand for or not. The idea of them being removed is wrong. But also, let's go back to Black Boy Lane. Again, you know, that was changed despite no one wanting it to be changed, because white people, inevitably on the council, said, well, sorry, they even polled the people on the road, and no one who was black on the road was remotely bothered by it. They all answered saying, we don't get rid of it, we're not stupid, we understand that it was actually nothing to do with black people, and still the council went ahead and removed it. But do you not think that is the perfect demonstration of a little bit of the UK's history being removed, and people being treated like they're stupid, like they don't understand context, and why it's this idea of our patriotism no longer existing?
I just think that if you are taking, I mean, you acknowledge that's like a small example, right?
But I think that's one of a million that I could come up with.
So the issue there is that most of the time, in most ways, I think patriotism is like enormously encouraged in our country. I think flags are far more visible than when I was a child. And, you know, I expressed my patriotism at the beginning of this show, and I do not find that difficult. I'm on the left. That's welcome amongst my friends to say the kinds of things that I said there. And you're describing a specific discussion that is happening at the moment about, like, how do we put context around or, you know, ignore particular bits of our history. Most of our history is so prominent and so publicly, like, we see stuff about the Second World War, we see stuff about the Tudors, we see stuff about the abolition of slavery, Victoria. This is all such a big part of our culture. There is an interesting and important debate to be had about how we deal with something like Black Boy Lane, but most of the time I think our history is a really big part of our culture, and that's lovely.
Yeah, but I think that there is an idea of sort of wanting to to talk us down constantly, and I think it comes from your side. Anyway, on that note, I can't let you respond because we've got to get to a break.